On first pass, viewers might assume that Netflix's visceral series Adolescence is a whodunit crime show about a fringe murder case. A story of a normal young boy, Jamie Miller, who is caught stabbing his classmate Katie Leonard late one night in a local car park. What follows is not only a gripping drama about a search for answers, but also an exploration of what is happening to young men and what happened to this young man to make him this way. The show forces us to question the complexity of this young boy's crime without providing simple answers. It asks us what forces are at play that mean that men, and in some cases even boys, could be capable of perpetrating such heinous acts of violence. As we're plummeted into the worst case scenario, the brutal and seemingly senseless murder of a schoolgirl, we naturally find ourselves pointing fingers and casting judgments. But this knee-jerk reaction only serves as a trick to distract us from ourselves, the subtle art of misdirection. It's a sleight of hand which stops us from asking questions to ourselves about ourselves. One clear theme throughout the show is that whilst the men we meet struggle to understand their own emotional worlds, the one language that many of these characters do understand is the language of violence. A language people learn all too easily from the world around them. The most extreme example of this is seen in the murder of Katie Leonard at the end of episode 1. But its first showing is much earlier, starting with policing, where we see that violent entry is justified because it's a response to a violent crime. This language of violence runs throughout the series. We see it in bullying in the school canteen, or Ryan being beaten up by Jade and subsequently mocked by his peers.
Just got banged by a girl, you sausage.
Later, we see Jamie fighting with another inmate to resolve his beef. And we even see it in Jamie's dad, Eddie, violently shaking the boy who graffitied his van.
Don't smile, kid, because I'll slap that fucking smile off your face.
The message is clear. Violence is the ultimate problem-solving device. And in a world where violence is normalized, it raises the question of whether a 13-year-old boy would be able to tell the difference between which violence is okay and which is not. Throughout adolescence, men and boys are almost always shown as emotional islands. From the outset, we watch the silent internal monologues of Jamie, Eddie, and Bascom as they individually navigate their worlds, alone and unheard. People around them often extend a hand for connection or support, but these men and boys are seemingly unable to accept those invitations. Instead, we see their characters often overwhelmed and emotionally flooded, even when surrounded by friends and family. In contrast, we see women talking and processing with each other, with Manda and Lisa providing reassurance, physical touch, and answers to difficult and complex questions, even without solutions. When the fathers and sons of adolescents do their best to try and connect, they don't quite know how to show up in the moment. See Eddie struggling at Jamie's football match.
I just stood there on the side of the pitch while all the other dads were laughing at him.
Or Bascom talking to Adam about the manosphere, but lacking the patience to listen. What fathers provide here is physical and practical, but never emotional.
Hey, you calling, son? Yeah, keep your strength up, yeah?
And this emotional void is not only directed towards other people, but is also internal, leaving men to suffer alone in silence. Loneliness is a recurring theme and manifests in different ways. From Jamie's desperation to be seen and liked by Bryony,
Do you like me?
to the case of Eddie, who experiences a day of challenges on his birthday, but tries to suppress his emotions so as not to burden his family whilst trying to solve the problems alone. All of this culminates with Eddie in Jamie's room in the show's final scene, where we see him learning a difficult yet crucial lesson, that there is no way around difficult emotions, only through them. Interestingly, throughout the entirety of the show, we never see a man sit down with another man or a boy and explain masculinity to him. Instead, we see that education happening without conversation, almost like a form of silent osmosis. When asked about being a man, Jamie recalls learning lessons from his dad and granddad via role modelling.
What's your dad and his dad like?
Men.
More damagingly, he recounts the way that his dad reacted to his lack of sporting prowess and the feelings of shame he experienced when he felt he'd underperformed.
But when I'd fuck up, he'd just look away.
We also see these unconscious lessons continued in Jamie's dad and what he shares about his own father.
Sometimes he'd take the belt to me and he'd fucking whack me, and he'd whack me.
But this is also where we see a glimmer of hope. Eddie has intentionally rejected the script of violence that his dad taught him and has moved towards a corrective script of presence and care for his son.
I just wanted to be better.
Eddie has tried to be a good dad, all while grappling with the mistakes he's made whilst parenting.
He has a terrible temper, but so have you.
This is a reality that is sure to feel familiar to parents across the UK. That sense that we may not really understand what's going on in our young people's worlds. Losing an understanding of what a child's internal world looks like as they transition into their teenage years is almost seen as a rite of passage for parents. We see it when Jamie's parents talk about him isolating and being glued to a computer they wish they'd never bought. We see a similar dynamic in Bascom's relationship with Adam, as he voices concerns about his suitability as a dad.
Sometimes I don't think I'm the right fit for him as a dad, you know what I mean?
But here, Adolescence presents a father with another opportunity to write new scripts for himself by carving out intentional time and space to prioritize connection and conversation with his son.
So where do you want to go for chips?
Throughout Adolescence, we hear a number of references to the manosphere, a liminal online space which seems to be the breeding ground for acts like the one Jamie commits.
It's a call to action by the manosphere.
In the real world, the manosphere consists of a collection of online groups and communities who share common sexist and misogynistic ideologies.
Or even the stab wounds, well, where they said there were stab wounds. You know, there's bone in the penetration spots. You know, if you're making stuff up, at least make it anatomically possible. Do you know what I mean?
These groups have some key differences, but they agree that women should be subordinate to men and that feminism has disrupted the natural order of things in a way that is harmful to men. Adolescence refers to incels on a number of occasions. Incels are one of the groups in the manosphere who believe that all men are entitled to sex by virtue of being male, but that because of the way in which women prioritize mating with only high-status men, lots of men will never have the sex they deserve because they are not attractive or successful enough. In the show, these ideologies are widely understood amongst the boys and girls in the school and used as put-downs for students.
Oh, she's saying he's an incel, Dad.
We see that the language the students use is coded via symbols.
It's an exploding red pill. Pills, the blue pills means you see the world as it wants you to.
That's from The Matrix. You've been watching The Matrix?
The manosphere often provides simple answers to specific desires and questions that boys have. How to attract women, how to be popular, how to make money, and so on. Ideas which conform to a traditional patriarchal idea of masculinity. It's no surprise then that Jamie has picked up all of these messages about what it means to be a man. That men should be providers and dominant, that they should be attractive to women, and that women should listen to men and even be afraid of them. Meanwhile, the adults of adolescence display only a basic understanding of the content that the young people are accessing, fundamentally underestimating its power. Where the manosphere started in niche internet forums, it has more recently permeated mainstream social media apps and video streaming platforms like TikTok and YouTube. Some are influencers with large platforms. Their content is available to the mainstream and often pushed onto app users' feeds by algorithms.
Look at that fella that popped up on my phone. Going on about how to treat women and how men should be men and all that shit.
Ultimately, Eddie knows he should have done more to discuss these type of things with his son, but lacks the knowledge of where to start or how.
Can't keep an eye on them all the time, love. We just can't.
One final area of adolescence that demands consideration is the impact of men's violence on women and girls.
Katie isn't important, Jamie is. Everyone will remember Jamie, no one will remember her.
In this scene, we feel a deep worry that Katie's role in the story will be forgotten. It's a process we see play out on loop in our news reporting and tabloids, where women are reduced to victims and men are stripped of their identities and therefore their personal responsibility. But here, adolescence presents us with an uncomfortable tension. We spend so much time thinking about the men that we forget the women who suffer. This takes multiple forms across the show. During Jamie's interrogation, Bascom uses the existence of Katie's family to evoke an emotional reaction from Jamie, reducing Katie's mum to a tool to coerce an admission of guilt.
You want to say sorry to Katie's mum?
Or think of Jade, left to mourn the passing of her friend, forcing us to reflect on the families and the communities around victims and survivors who are left to deal with the aftermath. A task which often falls to female authority figures, drawing our attention to the role of women in our society who are often socialised to do care work in both personal and professional settings and expected to carry that responsibility without remuneration. Crucially, we see Bryony experiencing an overwhelming sense of fear and dread in the face of Jamie's aggression, culminating in her breaking down after he confesses that he could have touched her, severely shaking her hopes for Jamie's redemption. And finally, we see Manda and Lisa attempting to support Eddie, with Jamie's mum crumbling under the emotional weight of losing her son and trying to hold her family together, whilst also trying to work through her own emotions with a partner who doesn't have the capacity to support her in the same way. Throughout adolescence, women are often expected to provide forms of unpaid emotional labour in their homes and at work, with their children and other people's, and with their partners and men in their lives. But at what cost? Ultimately, adolescence doesn't provide us with a solution to the problems presented to us. There is no single factor to lay blame upon. Instead, we're left to contend with an interconnected web of issues. The end goal not just being about saving and protecting women and girls, but also, for men and boys, about saving themselves. This complex exploration of what is going on in the worlds of boys and men leaves us with subtle hints towards an alternate future where deeper connection and expression are possible, and raises the question of how we can better support men and boys on their journeys and what we can do to move forwards after tragedy.
I'm sorry, son. I should have done better.